Every story has a hidden truth, a side no one talks about. And sometimes that truth changes everything you thought you knew. Today's story is one of those. But before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's begin. The water was so cold it felt like 1,000 needles piercing my skin at once. That was the first thing I realized. Not that I was drowning, and not that my own stepmother was standing on the deck of a multi-million-dollar yacht watching me sink, but that the ocean has a way of silencing everything you thought you knew about your life. I looked up through the salt and the foam, the sunlight shimmering on the surface like shattered glass. High above, the sleek white hull of the starlight aurora looked like a predator. And there she was. Diane. She didn't look horrified. She didn't look like a woman who had just accidentally knocked her stepdaughter overboard during a heated argument. She looked peaceful. She leaned over the mahogany railing, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, and she did something that chilled me more than the Atlantic ever could. She smiled. It was a small, thin smile. The kind of smile you give when you've finally cleared a persistent weed out of a beautiful garden. "Goodbye, Elena," she whispered. I couldn't hear her over the roar of the engines as she signaled the captain to move full speed ahead, but I saw her lips move. I saw the wake of the boat begin to churn, pushing me further into the abyss. How did I get here? Just 3 years ago, my father was the king of the shipping industry, and I was his world. Then came Diane. She was sophisticated, soft-spoken, and seemed to breathe life back into my father after my mother passed. I wanted him to be happy, so I ignored the way she looked at his jewelry. I ignored the way she slowly replaced the staff who had known me since I was a baby. But my father wasn't a fool. Before he passed away 6 months ago, he told me something I never forgot. He said, "Elena, people show you who they are when they think they've already won. Wait for that moment. That's when you'll know what to do." I thought Diane loved him. I thought we were a family. But as the yacht, my father's pride and joy, became a white speck on the horizon, leaving me alone in the vast rolling blue, I realized I had been living in a house of mirrors. She thought she had inherited the empire. She thought the lawyers had finalized the paperwork. She thought that by getting rid of me today on this healing memorial cruise, she was erasing the last hurdle to her fortune. But as I treaded water, fighting the urge to let my lungs fill with the sea, a single thought kept me buoyant. It was a thought that burned hotter than the sun. Diane had spent so much time looking at the glitter on the surface that she never bothered to look at the foundation. She forgot one very important detail. She forgot who actually signed the checks. She forgot who paid for every inch of that yacht. And most importantly, she forgot that I am my father's daughter. The struggle to stay alive in open water changes you. It strips away the girl who was afraid of confrontation and replaces her with someone who only knows how to survive. Luckily, I wasn't just some socialite. I grew up on these docks. I knew that 3 miles east was a buoy line for a private marina. It took me 4 hours. 4 hours of salt stinging my throat and the terrifying thought of what might be swimming beneath my feet. When my fingers finally brushed against the rusted metal of a channel marker, I didn't cry. I just held on. I was rescued by a local fisherman named Elias. He didn't ask questions when he saw my tattered silk dress or the way my hands were raw from the rope. He just wrapped me in a wool blanket and gave me hot tea. As the adrenaline began to fade, the heartbreak set in. Diane had tried to kill me. The realization felt like a physical weight on my chest. I remembered the way she used to tuck my hair behind my ear and tell me I was the daughter she never had. It was all a performance. Every meal, every shared tear over my father's casket, it was all a calculation. She had been poisoning my father's mind against me for months before he died, telling him I was unstable, that I was spending his money recklessly. She wanted him to leave it all to her for safekeeping. When the boat docked, I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I knew Diane. If I went to the authorities now, she'd hire the best lawyers in the country using my father's money and claim it was a tragic accident. She'd say I jumped. She'd say I was distraught. No, to take down a woman like Diane, you have to let her believe she has already won. You have to let her get comfortable in her victory. I spent the next week in a small motel, watching the news. There it was, shipping magnate's daughter missing at sea. Diane appeared on camera, draped in black lace, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Elena was so fragile, she told the reporters. The loss of her father was just too much. I tried to grab her, but the waves, they were so big. I felt a cold, hard stone form in my stomach. She was using my grief as a weapon. While she was busy hosting celebration of life parties at our estate, parties that were really just networking events for her new life as a billionaire widow, I was meeting with my father's real legal team, not the ones Diane knew about. The real ones. See, Diane didn't understand how my father operated. He was a man of contingencies. He knew that the moment he married a woman 30 years his junior, the vultures would start circling. He had set up a tiered inheritance. Diane received a generous allowance and the right to live in the house, yes. But the assets? The company? The yacht? They were held in a blind trust that only activated upon two conditions: his passing and a 6-month character window for the secondary beneficiary. Diane thought the 6 months were up today. She thought the yacht cruise was the final celebration of her full ownership. What she didn't know was that I had been the trustee the entire time. Every penny she spent on her new diamonds, every repair she ordered for the boat, every champagne bottle she popped, she was spending money that didn't belong to her. I sat in the dark of my motel room, looking at the digital signatures on my laptop. I could see her spending in real time. She had just bought a vintage Porsche. She had just booked a penthouse in Paris. She was stripping the accounts bare, thinking the replenishment was coming Monday morning. But the replenishment wasn't coming. I was the one who controlled the flow. I started to realize the depth of her betrayal. I found emails she had sent to her real boyfriend, a man she'd been seeing since before my father fell ill. They were planning to sell the shipping company and move to the Mediterranean. They laughed about the girl. They called me a useless inheritance tax. The pain I felt during those hours in the ocean turned into a sharp, focused instrument. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was ready. I realized that my father hadn't just left me money. He had left me a test. He wanted to see if I had the strength to protect what our family had built. I spent days gathering every recorded phone call, every forged signature she had used to try and move funds early, and, most importantly, the GPS data from the yacht. The Starlight Aurora had high-tech sensors that recorded everything, including the exact moment the weight on the deck shifted and the cameras on the stern were manually turned off. She thought she was clever by disabling the cameras. But she forgot that I was the one who installed the black box security system 2 years ago after a minor burglary. The cameras she turned off were just for show. The hidden ones? They saw everything. They saw her hand on my back. They saw the shove. They saw the smile. The night of her victory gala arrived. Diane had invited the elite of the city to the yacht to celebrate her official takeover of the company. The deck was covered in white roses, and the finest caviar was being served. She was wearing a dress that cost more than most people make in a year, holding a glass of crystal, laughing with her lover. I waited until the speeches began. She stood at the microphone, her voice trembling with fake emotion. My late husband would be so proud to see us here, and though we lost dear Elena to the sea, her spirit is with us. Is it? I walked out from the shadows of the bridge, stepping into the glow of the chandeliers. The silence that hit the deck was absolute. It was as if someone had sucked the air right out of the harbor. Diane's glass hit the floor, shattering into a million pieces, just like my life had a week ago. Her face went from tan to a ghostly, sickly gray. "Elena?" she gasped, her voice cracking. "You? You're alive? It's a miracle." "No, Diane," I said, my voice calm and echoing through the speakers. "A miracle is surviving the ocean. What happens next is just business." I signaled the men standing behind me. They weren't party guests. They were the federal authorities and the bank's repossession team. "You're under arrest for attempted murder," I said, stepping closer to her. "But before they take you away, I want you to know something. You spent the last 6 months trying to steal a life you didn't build. You thought this boat was your prize." I leaned in, whispering so only she could hear. "I revoked your access to the trust 4 days ago. Every cent you spent this week? That's bank fraud. The Porsche? The jewelry? The clothes? They're all being seized tonight. And as for this yacht..." I looked around at the beautiful vessel. "You're standing on my property. And I want you off my boat. Now." The police moved in as the guests watched in horror. Diane screamed. She clawed. She tried to claim I was a ghost, an imposter. But the video played on the large screens intended for her tribute, the video of her pushing me into the dark water. As they led her away in handcuffs, stripped of her stolen finery, I stood at the railing. I looked out at the water, the same water that tried to take me. Revenge isn't about hurting someone the way they hurt you. It's about restoring the balance. Diane wanted the world to think I was weak, a victim of my own grief. Instead, she showed me exactly how strong I am. She forgot that wealth isn't just about what's in your bank account. It's about the character of the person holding the pen. I watched the blue lights of the police cars fade into the distance. The yacht was quiet now, the roses wilting in the salt air. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known since my father died. He was right. People do show you who they are when they think they've won. And Diane showed me she was nothing. I am Elena Vance. I am a survivor. And I am finally home. For more stories, please subscribe the channel and press bell icon.